Mr. Davey, it seems the
Sure.
governor is getting a lot of pushback on having soldiers in the subway. Is this pushback undeserved?
I think so. I mean, look, the governor saw that our customers were saying that they wanted to be safer, they wanted to feel safer, and she brought resources to bear. As I also said in the council hearing, that was one point of a 5-point plan, that she's also investing time and resources. And I think one issue that should be talked about and hasn't been is the investment in our scout teams, which is helping emotionally disturbed individuals get the help they need. Because that has been consistently the top concern of our subway customers since we've been polling them the last 2 years, the top concern every month. So I think the governor's bold move is helping us move the dial on safety.
If I can just follow up real quick, Rich, it does seem that the number of crimes in the subway seems to rise and fall inversely proportional to the number of police officers in the system. Are we looking at something that ought to become the new normal in terms of deployment or some variation of this?
No, I think it rises and falls when recidivists aren't kept in custody. I mean, that's the problem I think we have. I mean, Chief Kemper has said it, 1% of all the folks in our system last year committed like 20% of the crime. So I don't think we need to rise and fall with police resources. I think we always want to see police resources. But for those career criminals or folks who require, have acute mental health issues, if we get them out of the system, I think we'll be in very good shape.
All right, I think we went from Mr. Davey to Rich in about 1 minute and 10 seconds.
Well, it was going to get worse too.
That really was my question. I mean, you had an assemblywoman criticizing, saying there was a resource allocation issue, but, what is your understanding? Are the cops being allocated properly, and where there were some complaints that they were kind of bunched up in Manhattan? Are they being put in places that are more higher crime precincts now? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, so the NYPD obviously distributes and deploys the police in a number of ways, and we work cooperatively with them, right? So it's not only crime, it's obviously the station sizes, in terms of how many customers are coming through, customer satisfaction, what our station agency. So we take all that information, share it with Chief Kemper and his team. He deploys in that way. So, look, and we also have, as we talked about, cameras all over the system as well, so we can see what's happening and move folks in. I mean, I think the deployment has been terrific. I see cops all over the place, platforms, up in station mezzanines, and also talking to our employees too, who, as I mentioned, we've had some serious attacks on our employees, which have been outrageous, and so making sure that our people feel safe too is important.
What is your response to the criticism from TWU that you guys aren't doing enough?
Look, I mean, I talk to, not to be confused with President Davey, I talk to President Davis on a regular basis, and we're making strides. And I think, they're concerned, they're outraged, and I get that, but I've also said too, work stoppages and other things don't solve problems, press conferences don't solve problems. What we do behind the scenes is talk about how we're making improvements, how we're improving our employee safety, and we're making strides in that regard. I literally met with another union rep this morning, concerned about stations. We had a very constructive discussion about how we can improve safety in our stations as well. So, again, I appreciate whatever TW needs to do, but I can tell you that the conversations we're having are productive, constructive, and are actually moving the ball forward.
All right, over here, the West Coast, Nolan from America's Page 6 paper.
Indeed.
Go ahead.
Sure. How are you?
Well, hopefully on page 2.
Yeah.
What role, if any, did the unions play in the decision to deploy the National Guard into the system?
I'm not aware they played any.
Was there a risk of another walkout if there wasn't a dramatic step taken?
No, I don't think so. I mean, my perspective on that walkout is it was illegal. So, so they have to deal with that. I think, as I mentioned at the press conference a week and a half ago, I have assurances from the union that we're going to work constructively to address the issues. Walkouts and press conferences don't do that, but finding ways to improve employee safety, like cameras in cabs and looking at protective cockpits for our bus operators, that improves safety. That's what we're working on right now with them.
It ups the pressure, though, right? Because you can't run a system if you have wildcat strikes. You can't.
Of course
people
not.
can't get home. So,
which is why this is illegal.
How does it change the political calculation?
Well, which is why it's illegal, right? So the Taylor law is in place to prevent that kind of stuff. Obviously, the employees do have a right if they're asked to do something unsafe. If they're asked to take a bus out with a missing wheel, obviously they have the right to say no. That's not what happened here. Union leadership, basically demanded, or in some respects got in the way of some train movements. Again, I think that has calmed down, and we're having constructive conversations now.
All right, Evan back here from the news.
Hey, Rich.
Sure.
You mentioned in there that there have been RFPs returned for the platform screen doors.
Yes.
And that happened last month. I'm wondering, can you give us an update on that? What's the timeline on that? I know RFPs typically should have, at least for the people responding, some sense of time.
Yeah, we'll get back to you. I mean, literally, I got the sticky note passed to me. Our C&D team has been sort of actually following the procurement process. I have not. But it was in response to the, what are you doing about platform safety? And obviously, the steps we've taken is to try these platform barriers in advance of, what are complicated and frankly expensive platform screen doors. And what we also know too is there are a number of stations for the weight, for example, the curvature, we won't be able to install them. So we need to find other solutions, but we'll get back to you on the timing. I don't know how many responses or who responded, I don't know any of that. But we can get back to you on what we can disclose at this point of the procurement process.
All right, thanks,
Rich, would you like to add anything?
Jose.
I jumped in at the
No,
end.
no, please, all right.
Anything you'd like to add about the city's role in terms of bus lane rollout here? I know that the DOT commissioner is going to be on
Sure.
the stand and take some heat for that. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I'm the type of person that expects, has high expectations of my team and then the people that I work with, including the DOT. I'd love as many and as more bus lanes as they can possibly do. I think I've volunteered to go out and paint some bus lanes myself. That still stands. But all that being said, as I mentioned, they've got a lot of constituencies they have to work with as well. I am one, but where I'm going to still advocate and fight for, the bus, our bus riders up in Fordham Road, for example, and some of the other places that we want to see bus lanes. And as I mentioned, I'm excited about enforcement too. We know that bus lanes and enforcement together improve bus speeds 25, 30%, and that's the number one complaint from our bus customers: your buses are too slow.
All right, anything else?
Rich, is there anything
question. Go ahead, man.
is there anything you want to say to Whoopi Goldberg?
I mean, look, I loved her in Ghost, but look, I will offer Whoopi the same that I offered Josh Gottenheimer. I will pull out 2, lawn chairs. I'll put them out in front of my apartment, which is 2 blocks from the Lincoln Tunnel. I'm happy to buy the beverage of her choice, and we can see all the congestion and all the traffic not going by because there's so much congestion in our neighborhood. So, I mean, that's, at the end of the day, this is the law of the land, and I have said many times before, I am probably the most unabashed supporter of congestion pricing because I know what it means for my riders. I also know what it means for my neighbors.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Actually, is there anything else you would have liked to have done for the last 3 hours?
Well, let's see. What time is it? I mean, the weather is lovely outside, I think, right?
Yes, it is.
It was a good conversation. Now, this is part of the job. Obviously, the city, provides us a lot of resources. I didn't have that in Boston. It was a very different experience where the city didn't provide a lot of resources and revenue. New York City provides a lot of resources and revenue to us, so it's important for us to be here to answer their questions, hear their concerns, but also for them to hear what we're doing. And I think we've got a lot to be proud of.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.